Welcome to the Enlighten Up podcast, where I am going to take you into a deep exploration of what it means to exist in this current reality. We are going to raise your vibes, open your mind, expand your heart, and dive deep into the wondrous mysteries and possibilities of this lifetime. There's been a spiritual catalyst that has set in motion the awakening process of many across the globe to return to the knowingness of self and unite what has been separated. Together, we're going to bring light into that darkness. We're going to remember the joy of living. But most of all, we're going to turn up the volume of our own eternal power and do the thing we're here to do. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Enlighten Up podcast. Today, I have a brand new guest joining me on the show, and his name is Tyran Mowbray, and he is the leading masculine mentor helping men advance their life. He is also the creator of the Advanced Man Academy, which I'm a huge fan of that name. I love that. Welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Nicole. Thank you very much. Yes, the Advanced Man Academy. I love it. I'm really excited to share that with you guys.
Yeah, I mean, what birthed that? Like, where did that conceptualize? What kind of inspired it?
That's a long story into itself, but ultimately, like I was mostly focused on men's sexuality and relationships, and I was working a lot with men in this area, and what's beneath sexuality is unprocessed emotions, right? Like, so the main reason guys either struggle in the bedroom or porn addicts or, sex focused is because they're trying to get some emotional need met. And so, I can teach them heaps of practices to master their sexuality, but ultimately what we need to find is what's the emotional driver? What's driving this need? Any addiction, right, is driven by an emotional need. So once I taught them to master their sexuality, and then we start processing emotions, the thing that stops a lot of men from processing their emotions or even going into there or being aware is this whole identity around masculinity and what masculinity means. So I end up doing, like, even though I may teach tantra and ejaculation mastery and, relationships and, masculine feminine dynamics, what I ended up working with all these guys about was what it means to be a man and identity around masculinity. And so, as I ran these programs again and again and again, and the same patterns played out, I was like, fuck, I need to change this a little bit. I need to evolve it so that it's, so that they're getting everything that they need. And I started with embodiment, right? Embodiment became a thing. So it was going to be called the Embodied Entrepreneur, or the Embodied Man Academy. But in the spiritual worlds, embodiment is absolutely
saturated,
saturated. But in the not so spiritual words, no one fucking knows what it means. And so, I remember I'm a part of a brotherhood up here in the Gold Coast called Brotherhood Gold Coast. And they run this event called Advanced to Alpha. So it's about advancing to become an alpha. I don't like it. I don't like the terminology alpha, but I love what they're doing and what they stand for. And ultimately speaking, I was like, why do you call it Advanced to Alpha? And they go, well, because we're advancing. We're not retreating. We don't run retreats. Retreat is to go backwards. We're advancing. And I was like, the penny dropped for me. I was like, holy fuck. Yes. And so, I checked in and I changed it from the Embodied Man Academy to the Advanced Man Academy. And it just made so much more sense, and it became so much easier because it's like, I don't have to explain what embodiment is. It's not just about embodiment. It's about advancing us as men and helping us grow. And so the pentagram, which you can see there, represents 5. It's got 5 points. So I advance health, I advance happiness, which is emotional intelligence. We advance in relationships, we advance in identity, and we advance in wealth. So we've got 5 points of the star, which represent the 5 areas that are addressed in the Advanced Man Academy.
I love that because it's true. To retreat is very much more of a feminine energy in many ways, right? And so if where your focus is men, then it does totally make sense that the advanced word, I love that because it does feel in so many ways, like we've gone backwards as a society, or I don't know, maybe it's sideways or in all different kinds of directions. It's a little bit chaotic right now, but I'm a huge fan of what you're doing right now. And I think it's desperately needed in our world. So thank you for doing the work that you're doing. Well, you mentioned that, men are looking to have an emotional need met, but they don't really know what that is. Have you found like there's a common denominator or a few usual ones that men are seeking, but they don't even realize they're looking for?
Well, ultimately, it's love. It's always love. Like we're all trying to seek love, but what that love looks like or what we need in the form of love changes, So obviously everyone's heard the 5 love languages, or most people have, So words of affirmation, touch, acts of service, gifts, and quality time, right? So we all want to receive love, and we all have things that make it easy to receive love and things that we don't like, things that we resist. And so, that's the hardest thing is like, I think because we try to fit labels or we try, like we love as a society, we love to box things up and make things simple and compartmentalize. And it works for a lot of us, don't get me wrong. But what happens is the moment it doesn't fit in a box, we can kind of freak out, and that's where a lot of the self-criticism, judgment, shame, guilt, all those types of things come in. It's like, well, I don't fit here and I don't fit there, so that means there must be something wrong with me. And, we've seen it massively in the last kind of few years with gender fluidity and, people not wanting to fit into the male, female boxes or labels. And so, we've seen a massive diversity in that range as well. And relationships, first there was just monogamy and swingers, and now there's monogamy, open relating, polyamory, you're pansexual, bisexual, asexual, homosexual, heterosexual. It's like, there's all of a sudden.
Why are people confused? I don't get it.
I don't understand, So yeah, anyway, it's like, what's the need that the men want mostly? I mean, predominantly it's acceptance. They want to feel loved. They want to feel accepted. They want to feel like they're included. But the biggest one I think is pride. And they want to, a lot of men that I work with have always told me they've never had a proper male role model in their life, or not one that they, respected or anything like that. And so for me, I think the relationship between a father and a son is really, really valuable and is really missing in our world with lots of broken families. And not that a family needs to be together for the whole period of time. I also don't believe that, that's always the healthiest way, because if the relationship is toxic, then between the mother and the father, then it's not going to be supportive for the children. But it's like, but the parents still need to be around, the father still needs to have a positive influence on the son. And so, yeah, I think the biggest thing is like, a man wants to feel proud in who he is and how he's showing up. And that's why there's been this big insurgence of purpose and mission for men in masculinity over the last few years, I think, because we all want to have a reason to exist.
Oh, of course. I mean, and right now there's just a lack of direction. And I think that, you talk about like that idea of like men wanting to be accepted, and I understand the pride thing. It makes total sense to me. Men are literally being treated as the rejects of our society right now, just simply for having a penis. And it's clearly been a result of some third wave modern feminism and a whole bunch of other things that have gone along with that. But I think that even in the spiritual community, there's been so much focus on the feminine, which I think is great to some extent. I think women needed to find some sort of empowerment or feel their sense of purpose and place in this world. But it's kind of come at a cost of, we don't talk enough about the masculine or the men as well. And I think that without having both parties present in the conversation, we're not exactly going to learn what we need to learn from one another. So I am super happy to have you here on the show so we can talk about this. You are doing a lot of different things. Where did that all start from? Like, what drove you to want to go into ejaculation mastery and exploring sexually? Like what, and even like, did you always feel happy in your life or have a sense of purpose? Like where did it all kind of begin for you or wake up?
Yeah, well, how long is this podcast?
And don't miss all the good details.
Yeah, okay. So firstly, I just want to backtrack one thing. You're talking about third wave feminism and feminine empowerment. And I'm a by definition of feminism, I am a feminist, right? Equal rights for all. If that's the definition in the dictionary, then I'm a feminist. That being said, I believe that a woman that has felt disempowered in her life at any point has never harnessed the power of femininity, right? Like there's so much talk of the patriarchy and toxic masculinity and all that throughout the generations. And I'm not here to say that men are perfect by any stretch of the imagination. We've done a lot of fucked up shit, a lot of dumb shit. But me growing up and the world that I existed in and the world that I saw, women were never disempowered. Women always held the power in all the relationships that I witnessed, like my nanas, my grandmas, my wife, my mum, like my partners, my ex-partners, like all the relationships that I saw, the women always held the power in every relationship. Like, sure, the man led many things, but ultimately the man was always in service to the family and to the wife. Like everything he did was in service to his partner and to the family. And that's the thing that I think is overridden. And that's where men are being like rejected now. And so now it's like, well, hang on, everything I've done has been for the family and for the woman. And now I'm being told that I'm bad and unhealthy and toxic. It's like, well, what the fuck am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
So I just want to backtrack on that. But for me, no, I was not happy. I was a 20-odd-year-old party boy, chauvinistic asshole who had a hurt heart and slept with women once, maybe twice, and then had, because of my closed heart, pushed them aside and took drugs and drank and partied and, just refused to open because, I was cheated on when I was 16. And I was like, yeah, fuck that. That hurt too much. I'm not doing that again. And just became that dude, never had an issue picking up women, was always pretty lucky in that department, had some charisma, had some style, had some flair. But ultimately was never satisfied with any of those connections. And I had one relationship from 23 to 26, loved her fully. But oh my God, did I go through heartbreak inside that relationship, like the amount of stuff that plays out for us as young adults trying to learn how to relate when none of us have got any fucking idea whatsoever. And, just wanting to fit in, and so changing myself to fit into the environments that I was in so that I could get praise from my peers, from my mates, from the people around me, going to the gym to try to build muscle so that I could feel more like a man, instead of actually understanding what it takes to be a man and then going to live those things. I had some idea and don't think I was a bad man or a bad young adolescent man, but did a lot of bad things, and ultimately I had a breakdown. I had 27, my girlfriend had left me, and had a new boyfriend 3 weeks later. So I was very devastated. We had houses together and dogs and all those things. And the breakup was rough and my fault. She didn't feel safe inside the relationship, not because I did anything to her, but just situations that I'd put myself in and people come to the house and stuff. And she should have left, and I commend her for having her own set of values and morals with that. But now I can say that 10 years ago that was really hard to digest. But yeah, ultimately I had a breakdown. I remember working out in the mines, masturbating 4 times a day to porn, being on Tinder like I was a shareholder, and I got a dollar coin every time I swiped either direction, and it was hard. And so having lots and lots of sex with lots of women that I didn't love or appreciate, and feeling empty after I ejaculated every time. And I don't mean empty as in like, oh, that wasn't great. I mean like disgusted in myself. I mean like, yeah, like like sometimes I wouldn't even know if I'd orgasmed or not, because it was like there was just no pleasure there. And then wanting to feeling disgusting, like I couldn't lay in the bed anymore and I had to get away and I couldn't let this person touch me. And I remember trying to masturbate to porn once, without porn, and couldn't get an erection. And I was 27. And I was like, okay, Tyron, I think there's something wrong here. Like, I think this is not okay. Like, you're 27 and you can't get an erection without pornography. That's a problem. that's a fucking
This
problem.
this is actually a really common problem now.
It is now that I've spoken about it, and I'm realizing that, and even younger than 27, there are young kids that can't get aroused without external stimulation. And so that triggered a whole bunch of stuff, which that triggered the journey of like, okay, every time I go out, I'm trying to get laid. I'm trying to get as fucked up as I can so that I can have a good time, have confidence and charisma, and then go and chat to a table of women and hopefully eventually pick one up and take one home. Like that was my only reason of going out on a weekend. And obviously all that stems from me being very, very unhappy with my day-to-day life. And so the weekends are my chance to let it all out. So yeah, I got involved in, I started studying Tantra, but I wouldn't talk to anyone about it because I'm a 28-year-old dude. I'm not going to tell people I can't get an erection without porn. That's fucking terrible. What are they going to think, So I read all these books, I did all these practices on my own. And that journey probably took me 2 years when it could have taken me 2 months if I'd actually got support, which is why I do what I do now. But yeah, started trying to master my ejaculation, quit porn, quit drinking, quit drugs. It was easier to quit porn than it was drugs and alcohol. That I stumbled many, many, many times. I went traveling for 13 months. I had to leave my state and my town and my country because I knew that being in Australia, I was not going to be able to do what I wanted to do. Like the triggers for me to drink and party was too strong where I was. I had to remove myself from my environment to make the change that I wanted to make. So, and I journaled. I wrote a blog. I wrote a blog while I was traveling about my journey. Yeah. And, it was not what all my friends thought. They thought I was just going to write this debaucherous drugs and alcohol party bended blog, which would have been way more popular, but I didn't. And it was the first time most of them even knew that I was depressed or upset because, I never shared any of that with them.
And this is like the common theme amongst a lot of men is that they're not realizing they're all probably feeling so similarly alone, lost, without direction. Yeah. And kind of empty inside.
Oh, very empty, very empty. Yep. Yeah. And then, like I said before, like that's the dream for the mission, is because the mission then gives you purpose, right? Because we men believe they are inherently valueless. And so we need a reason to live. We need a job, we need money, we need a purpose, we need to showcase that we have some level of importance through our action or through our, what we're showing, how we're showing up.
Oh, gosh, so many things that you just dropped there that I'd love to touch on. For you, what was it about yourself that you were so unhappy with that brought you to these places where you would lie in bed next to a woman or just and feel disgust with yourself?
Well, so my first partner cheated on me. It was 16 and stuff. And when I say cheated, I think she just kissed someone. But at 16, that's everything,
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I mean, I've been cheated on in my mid 20s, and it devastated me. It sent me into the darkest place of my entire life, like the darkest place. I became a man hater, eater, like a black widow. It was awful. So I know, like it can, especially if, I mean, I don't know what you're like, but for me, I was a hopeless romantic. I just wanted to love. I just wanted, I was very super, super loyal. And so to have it all kind of blow up, it's absolutely devastating. But I think, for me, what I realized years down the road when I finally was moving into a state of forgiveness, which took me almost 7 years to get to, realizing that he was simply just showing me a mirror of how I didn't believe I was good enough. So it's like, for you, what was it for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, at 16, you got no fucking idea. You were just like, fuck women, they're all cheaters, right? And so then what happens is because I believe that every woman I attract is a cheater, right? It's like, it's the vibrational resonance. And then even if they're not cheaters, what I do is I start to antagonize them until they become cheaters, because I want to reinforce the story in my head that all women are cheaters.
Okay, I don't mean to interrupt you, but you've said something on your Instagram that I really like and I wanted to touch on, and that's perfect for what you just said there, is you said, if you don't believe you've earned it, there's no way you can magnetize it.
Yeah,
And I love that because it's so true, because your beliefs are everything.
of
They
course.
completely shape your frequency of
Mm.
whatever it is you're going to attract. So
Mm.
when did that really start to hit you?
I did a week-long sexuality training with an organization called ISTA, International School of Temple Arts. And that was like the first time that I was taught properly. Like they have a lot of modalities, they have facilitators, and they teach, and then they give you experiential practices to do, and then you do the practices, and then they teach a little bit more, and then they give you more practices to do. And so it's like this constant, it's not just at a school where you learn mentally, and it's not just the real world where all you get is experiences but no teaching. It's a beautiful space of both. And yeah, it came up in that. It was like that was where I learned the thing, right? So you select, provoke, distort, right? So you select people that will reinforce the story that you have. If they do not reinforce the story that you have, you will then provoke them to reinforce the story that you have. And then if they still don't reinforce the story that you have, then you will just distort the truth to make the reality real. So let's say cheaters, right? Like I find a woman, like 3 women in a row cheat on me. And so therefore, and I've already believed that they're cheaters anyway. And then I've just believed the next one's going to cheat. Now, what if she doesn't start to cheat? What I do is I start to antagonize her. I mean, maybe I call her fat. Maybe I tell her that she's not good enough. Maybe I flirt with other people in front of her. Maybe I, whatever, like on the subconscious level, but I start to do things which make her feel unloved and unworthy. And so then she goes to cheat because she wants love, right? And I'm not giving it to her. And then what happens is if she still doesn't cheat, then I just make up some fucking lie in my head that she had to work. Like she keeps working late. She keeps doing this, like I just create the reality that she's cheating on me, and I fucking leave, or I cheat, or I whatever. So, that was the first time that had ever been taught to me. And, is it 100% true? No, but like, more often than not, that's a very real thing that happens in our worlds.
100%. Yeah.
So yeah, it was just this realization of like, okay, if I want to be better than I am, I need to change the thing. Doing the same thing and expecting a different result, definition of insanity. So it's like I need to start making change about what I'm doing in order to create a different result. And the first thing was quitting porn and not having sex with women on the first date, for example. And the moment I started to do that, I started to feel things differently. My arousal pattern started to change, and all of a sudden I got this instant feedback loop of like, yeah, look, you make small changes and very quickly you get different results. And so then I just became kind of addicted to this, like, well, what else can I change? Like, what else is real? Like what else isn't real? What else is not true to me? So what else do I think is true, but is not true? And so then now it's just become this almost unhealthy addiction of like, where can I pull apart the fabric of reality and recreate a new reality for myself?
The porn thing is so interesting because, it's something that I used to watch. And then I, as you kind of go through your own healing journey, and whether it's spiritual or not, it's just, whatever you're kind of doing to work on yourself, you start to, there's just so many aspects to it that are not great, to put it lightly. But also it's this idea of how much it's creating a disconnect from your actual physical reality. And you start living in or being attracted to a reality that you have no physical connection with, or will ever have any physical connection with. And that's just so crazy in our world right now, since we all live on our phones to begin with. And then you add that into the mix. I just feel like it's setting our society up for a lot of disconnection.
Yeah, well, look, I'm not anti-porn, okay, straight off the bat. I believe porn can be a beautiful tool when used well. I grew up, I was born in the 80s, obviously, so I hit puberty around like early 2000, like late 90s, early 2000. And the porn back then was not what it is now. Like porn back then was people having sex, like people that having sex, consensual most of the time. It was quite artistic. There were storylines, it was funny. The porn now is just like, it's just deviates, it's just like so much, a lot of it. That being said, there is a lot of artistic, beautiful porn out there. And when I coach couples, I recommend them to watch porn together to because sometimes they struggle to create intimacy, or they struggle to get out of their head, or they struggle to come up with new ways to get exciting, passionate in the bedroom. So I'm like, go watch a porn, like go pick a porn together, like use it as an opportunity to create intimacy within your relationship. So it can be used really well when done like that. That being said, when it's your only source of intimacy on your own, like you say, on your phone. So I have this, what I teach men is like, we create pathways of pleasure. So we, neural pathways in our brain is how we create systems and beliefs. And so when you're watching your phone in one hand and jerking off in the other, you are training yourself to experience pleasure through visual stimulation, not through physical stimulation. And so this is what you're saying, the disconnect. This is where the disconnection happens. Now, what happens is when you repeat that behavior again and again and again and again and again, when someone touches you, you don't get aroused because that's not the way you've created an arousal pattern or a pathway to pleasure in your body. And so, this is why people that have had sexual assault, like, heavily in their past, on numerous times, they struggle to, they sometimes, in order to get aroused, they need to replay the assault situations in order for arousal to come, because it's so ingrained in their neural pathways that like this is how it happens. And so there needs to be a repatterning. You need to create a new pathway. And when you create new pathways, imagine the more you use a pathway, the stronger it gets. So if you've used it, like, for example, porn 3 times a day, every day for 10 years, that's not like a little goat track in the mountain. That's a fucking highway, and it's easy to drive because it's been used so many times. And when you're creating new patterns in your brain or new pathways for any behavior, it starts off as like a jungle trek, and you've got to like hack away with the machete to clear the path. But eventually, if you keep creating that path becomes more trodden on and easier to use. And, and so that's how we create pathways in the brain. And so pleasure is a massive one. And so my biggest practice that I teach dudes, I don't teach them any tantric sublimation to start with. I just go, cool, no porn, no masturbation, no sex, no ejaculation, no blowjobs, no nothing. But I want you to self-pleasure every day for 20 minutes. But you're not allowed to touch your dick. And they just go, well, what am I supposed to do? And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. Like explore your whole body. Imagine you're 12 again or 10 and you're like, what's this? What's that? And so it's about recreating new pathways, but you've got to give them a win. Male or female is irrelevant. You've got to give them a win soon, because if we don't have an experience, then we don't have an emotional driver to keep taking the action.
True. That's huge. When it was back in 2014, I was doing a mirror exercise that I was, just because for me, it was just not believing that I was good enough or that I had a lot of value. And my exercise that I was given was to stand in front of the mirror naked for 32 minutes a day. And lovingly and affectionately caressing every square inch of my body, my face, my hair, everything. Yeah. And if I wanted to, I could like get myself off if I wanted to, but that wasn't the purpose. Yeah. And I had to do this without missing a day. And I could not have one judgmental thought throughout the process. And if I did, I had to start back at time 0. So it was really interesting. And it was about 7 months in, because I missed a day twice. So I ended up having to do it for 16 months. Wow. But it was around 7 months in, I remember looking at myself in the mirror and I noticed I was seeing myself differently. Yeah. And I couldn't tell you exactly what it was. I just knew I saw myself in a completely different way. And it does take time and it takes effort and it takes like some conscious, I was going to say, conscious perception. But it really did kind of shift things for me. And I think that work that you're doing, like just creating those new neural pathways through touching yourself in a completely new way than you've really been driven to touch yourself is in many ways feels like you're going back to kindergarten, but it's so necessary.
Yeah. So have you heard of the 4 stages of awareness?
Go ahead.
So there's unconscious incompetence.
Okay.
Right. So that is when you're unaware of your inability to do something. Okay. And then there is conscious incompetence. So you finally become aware of your inability to do something. Like, holy fuck, I can't do this thing. Right. Or holy shit, I'm now aware of this pattern that plays out that So then there is conscious competence, which is when you make a conscious effort to change or to build a skill. And then there's unconscious competence, which is now it becomes second nature and habitual. And it's just this, you have this skill set that you do without having to think about it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, repattern. So it's unconscious incompetence, conscious incompetence, conscious competence, unconscious competence. So it's like this full cycle. And so like that's exactly what you're describing as well, recreating these neural pathways. You don't realize that watching porn and jerking off is creating a really unhealthy negative loop for your arousal patterns. And then you wonder why you can't get aroused when you're with a partner, or you wonder why, you're attached to having to have a peak orgasm, or you're attached to, whatever it is. So that's the unconscious part. Then you start to change it. And so like, then you start to be like, oh shit, I realize that, every time I watch porn, or every time I ejaculate, or every time that I climax as a woman, I get a come down and I actually don't feel super pleasurable or whatever. So it's like, okay, cool. I'm starting to see the pattern. So then you start to take actionable steps, and that's the really hard part. But eventually that becomes your new way of being. And that's when you don't have to, think about it. And if you think, I tell these dudes, right? So I work with guys from anywhere between, I think the youngest dudes I typically sign up and work with me are about 24, 25. And the oldest can be, anywhere up to about 60. And I'm like, I started masturbating at 13. Even at 25, that's 12 years of patterns that I have, like habitual patterns that I've do. That's at 25. If you're 35, that's 22 years. If you're 45, that's 32 years of like habitual masturbation pathway, like pleasure stuff. I can't break that cycle for you in 6 hours or in 1 week, like 8 weeks, I can give you some experiences which are really going to change things for you. But, it takes time to change 20 to 30 years of habitual patterns. That's deeply ingrained habits. And I've become very good at it. I created a self-pleasure like practice and a system, which, incrementally gives them, 16 months for me is too long. Like I can't, like I want results as quickly as I can, but obviously at the same time, like it's more about teaching them the tools that give them permission to keep exploring. Mm-hmm. It's like, how did I make them curious about themselves so that I can give them the tools, give them the practices, give them the guidelines, give them the limitations and then open the limitations step by step. And then after kind of, 8 to 12 weeks, it's like, cool. Now you've had a full body orgasm. You've had this like phenomenal experience. You've had all these things. How is that different to what it was before? Oh man, it was amazing. It was okay, great. Now it's your turn to just go and give yourself, just like explore, keep exploring, keep finding different ways. Like now it's you. Now the power is in your hands to now take responsibility for your pleasure or your relationship to pleasure. And then we go through another whole process when they want to start sharing that with a person. There's a whole lot more fear. Men suck at making noise when they're in pleasure. They're really, really bad at just being like, like they just can't vocalize it. And women love it. I did a poll on my Instagram, and every single woman.
No one wants a silent man.
No, every woman bar one who had sexual trauma in the past, and so a man's brought up predatory voices, which was hard for her. But everyone bar her wants their man to make noise.
I'm curious, when it comes to like performance anxiety, how has, like, from what you've seen with the men that you've been kind of guiding and mentoring, how is the world and the way it is now affecting performance anxiety in the bedroom for men?
Well, the thing is, arousal starts in the brain, right? Like so I said, pathways to pleasure. It's all it starts in here. Mm-hmm. And so people go, oh, just drop into your body. Yeah, but if you don't have a pathway in your neural chemistry that tells you that this is pleasurable, you're not going to find it pleasurable. So performance anxiety again is in the head. Like it's a stress mechanism. It's like I'm either not masculine enough, or I'm too masculine, I'm too dominant, I'm unsafe. I don't, she doesn't feel safe. She's not orgasming. I'm a predator. I'm toxic. Therefore, I've got to make sure that she comes, because, all these women complain whenever they don't climax, but most of the time women can't climax on their own, let alone with a fucking partner. But it's still my fault as the man. It's like there's a whole bunch of stuff here. So firstly, like, there's this thing that men should know it all. Right? Men should be able to please every fucking woman on the planet and be able to, know all the things and tick all the boxes. So that's a big thing that, that's why men suffer from performance anxiety. There's also like this, I love the feminine empowerment, but a lot of it that comes with it is like, men are only out there to get their own needs met, like we come too quick, we're animals, we blah, blah, blah. So it's also like shame around a man's sexuality, because, we're not masters of it, but guess what? No one fucking taught us how to be masters of it. And, if we've mastered the art of coming in 3 minutes. You ladies haven't. Most ladies have not mastered the art of coming in 3 minutes. Therefore, there's this big repatterning, like, well, if you need 45 and I only need 3, like, how about you bring that 45 down to 20 and I bring my 3 up to 20, right? Like, why don't we meet in the middle, as opposed to, why do I have to wait 45 minutes for you? Why don't you improve and I improve, and then we meet in the middle? And how do we do that? It does seem pretty fair, right? You want equal rights? Well, let's be fucking equal then. Let's be fully equal, So yeah, the performance anxiety is like, the pressure's all on the man to perform, because if I don't perform, then I'm not a man and you're not satisfied, which then makes me feel inadequate again. And so, like, that's where a lot of the stress happens. And because they watch porn, and all porn, like, I mean, not all porn stars, but a lot of them have big dicks and do fuck for 2 hours. And we don't get taught how to do that. So, what happened, like, I don't think we understand the amount of energy that moves through a 13-year-old boy's boy when he goes, oh, I'm just a boy, I'm an innocent boy, blah, blah, blah. And then just one day he just wakes up. And all of a sudden he's got this fucking penis that just will not go soft ever again. And all of a sudden, all his female teachers are now hot and they've got boobs, which he's never noticed before. And all he wants to do is put it in anything and everything. It's just this fucking energy that just, like, I run retreats and I've done co-ed spaces for women, right? And when I get women to drop into their masculine, right, I say, okay, ladies, I want you to imagine you've got a penis, and I want you to blah, 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 and I'm going to drop into space. Every single woman just starts thrusting. They just like, they start grabbing each other, bending each other over. They start like humping each other. And it's like, that's the maturity of their inner mask. And that's the maturity, like, that's what happens to a young boy when he hits puberty. And all we do is like, put it down. That's bad. You're a predator. It's like, rather than teach these, like, if we taught 13 to 15-year-old boys how to actually fucking deal with this thing, how much rape, how much sexual assault, how much fucking porn use, how much sex trafficking, how much prostitution, how much would that dissolve? I'm not saying all of it, right? But how much less would that happen on the earth if we taught 13 to 15 or 13 to 18-year-old boys how to manage their sexual energy, how to communicate with women, how to build emotional depth? Like in those pivotal years, if we taught these young boys that, we would drastically reduce our shit ton of the fucking negative things that we blame men for on the earth.
I was just thinking, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. It's absolutely necessary. The one beautiful thing about the internet is that it's now given space and a place for men to actually talk and express themselves. Whereas prior to the internet, just don't think these conversations were ever allowed to happen or even work. And so again, men and women both probably didn't even know any of this really existed, except for, the psychologists and the people who are kind of, doing this stuff. But it's like, that is an extremely important point and very fair. When you talk about all the different kind of initiations of like a boy becoming a man, like, what are some of the things that you believe are absolutely necessary for a boy to kind of go through when he's transitioning into becoming a man?
So part of my 4-month mentorship, the last month we do self-initiation. So I believe that the modern day world is full of initiations, right? Like back in the day when we lived in tribes, when the boys turned 13 or whatever, they'd be taken out with all the men. Some of them would have to spend 5 days, go hunting on their own, whatever. There was a whole bunch of different processes. We don't live in a world like that anymore. So therefore our initiation processes got to be a little bit different. Okay. Like I'm not saying that we should disconnect from nature at all, but in a world where, I walk outside my apartment and there's concrete and roads and cars and trucks and buildings and whatever, it's like, I don't walk out and face wolves and lions like they did back then. Therefore, our initiations do need to be slightly different. And, having sex for the first time is an initiation. Getting drunk for the first time is an initiation. Getting a job, getting a driver's license, buying a house, getting your own apartment, like these things are initiations in our life for all of us in different ways. Having a child, all those things are all initiations in life. And so I feel like we as a society, and part of my responsibility as a man, is to teach younger men to initiate themselves so that when they find this challenge in life, whether it's whatever it is in that, I want to buy a new house, I want to become a business owner, I want to whatever, they know how to handle that initiation process for themselves. And so I don't necessarily think going out to the forest for 3 days and going on a water fast and being alone all that is the only way to initiate. Like I was very lucky. For whatever reason, older women were attracted to me when I was a young pup, when I was 17, 18. And so I made love with a lot of older women when I was younger, and they initiated me into how to make love to women. Because they were like 30 plus. So they were very like, slow down, touch here, do this, like they guided me, and it was great. Like it was a massive benefit to all the people I slept with after that, because I was given information that a lot of 17, 18, 19-year-old boys are not given. And I'm not saying that everyone needs to sleep with older women, or older men, even if you're a woman, but it definitely, two 14-year-olds that have only ever watched porn trying to have sex for the first time, that's not helping anyone.
Yeah.
Like that's not helping anyone in the
pretty
future.
Unrealistic.
Yeah. So, like the initiations need to be, I think that's where we go missing. It's like, we need to let young men specifically, say that they have a desire, like whatever that's. I'm not talking about sexuality. Like, I'm going to get my driver's license. Okay, cool. What do you need to do to get your driver's license? I need to do this, this, and this. Okay, what's the process that you're going to take doing that? Like teach them to create their own initiation process and support them through the process. Like my dad and mum were very much like, you're going to learn. We're going to love you through the process, right? Like, we're here to help you, and we're going to give you what we think you should do, and we know that you're going to do it on the way that you want to do it anyway. And was it perfect? No. Did I hate them for a number of years? Yes, just like every teenager that and they gave me more freedom than a lot of my friends, but I'm still going to create reasons why they didn't do it right, because that's what we do as kids. But yeah, I think the initiation processes need to be taught, like, how do you self-initiate? How do you initiate yourself through different stages of life? Because I just turned 36 2 days ago, and I'm at another initiation. Thank you. I'm at another initiation now. Like I've got my own company and I'm employing people, and I'm running advances and events, like week-long events and stuff, and it's like it's all new to me. So it's like, how do I initiate myself through all of these processes?
And so like what's your kind of technique then, like that you try to use to self-initiate yourself, like through something that's like this big? Like it's something, it's you don't have probably a ton of people around you that are there to like lean on.
Yeah, no. So with all the trainings that I've done, basically the first thing I do is I set intentions, right? So behind my bookshelf over there, I've got a 10-year identity that I'm building, so who I want to be at 45. So I wrote that 6 months ago. And then I break it down. Okay, so what does that look like in 5 years? What does that look like in 2 years? What does that look like in 1 year? And so then I'm like, cool, now I've got steps to go through. Okay, in 1 year, if I want to be where I want to be in 10, and then where am I going to be in 1? What's the primary focus? What's the overarching thing that will drive all action? So I build an altar. It's just like, it's a chest. I could probably show you. It's my granddad. It's the last chest that my granddad renovated or fixed before he passed away. And on it, I've got some candles, some objects that mean something to me, a sigil, which is just like a symbol. And, you know, that altar represents the thing that I'm moving towards. Now, men can do, you don't have, you know, it doesn't have to be crazy crystals and like you could put a picture of a car. You know, if your mission or your thing you want to do is you want to buy a Lamborghini or whatever, then you could quite easily just have, you know, we call them vision boards in some place. Some people call them vision boards. Same thing. It's like, that's your altar. That's the thing that represents what you're moving towards, what you're driving towards. You know, maybe you want a family, so you put a picture up of a family, or, you know, it can be anything, but it's like, have some visual representation so that, you know, you can see it and you can visualize it and you can feel it in your body. These are all important processes. And, you know, okay, cool. What am I building? What am I creating? Who has what I want? Like, who do I know in my vicinity who is the closest to having obtained the things that I'm trying to move towards? Can I go and learn from them? You know, is there information they have that they can give me? Ultimately, I've still got to take the steps, but like, how can I gather some more information? And will they support me through the process? So there are many, many different ways. But yeah, for me, writing something down, having a visual representation, and then surrounding myself around people that have obtained something similar in the past.
So important.
And that, yeah, and then the initiation process kind of takes its natural unfoldment from there, you know, because you're already around people, you've got the emotional anchors of the written and the visual. And so from then on, it's just like, cool, now you just get to face all the resistance you have internally that's going to stop you from manifesting your state, that your dream.
Well, speaking of the resistance, there's this, we kind of have conditioned ourselves as a society to be way too comfortable with convenience, you know, and a lot of people are just, if it's too hard, they don't want to do it, and not realizing that if you want something different, that change is going to feel really hard in the beginning, because like you're just talking about, like you're going to be breaking years of patterning, whatever they might be. So what do you want to share on this idea of, you know, how in order to have the change of your reality, you have to put in the effort. Like you have to be willing to do something hard.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of my maps in my mentorship in the Advanced Man Academy, I talk about the resilience, building resilience. You know, like you want to create change, you've got to build resilience. So I can't remember where, I don't have the map laying down, but it's like, information is the thing that helps you build resilience, because the more information you have, the more data you have available to then make rational decisions. There's an aspect of strength. You know, like you need a certain amount of strength. Now that doesn't have to be physical strength but it needs to be mental or emotional strength, or physical. Like you need strength in one of those areas, if not all of them, to accomplish resilience. Fortitude, right? Like you need to be able to deal with adversity. And the third one, I can't remember off the top of my head, strength, fortitude, information, and I think it was determination or something like that. I can't remember. There was a fourth topic. And it's like, for me, emotion drives action, right? All emotion drives action. And I've been saying this for years. And, you know, Tony Robbins and Dr. Joe Dispenza and all these guys, you know, they all repeat the same stuff, like emotion drives action. And so I see these hyper masculine dudes like, suppress your emotions, get over it, you know, like fucking just deal with it. And it's like, it's complete bullshit. Because what happens is happiness and joy are emotions. And so if you suppress your emotions when it gets hard, what happens is you never feel grateful once you've accomplished the thing you've set out to do. And so what happens is then you get to the place and you're like, well, this is shit. Now I'm not happy. And yeah, because you've suppressed everything. Same as pleasure, right? You won't experience pleasure in anything because you are suppressing and denying. So for me, it's like go deeper into your emotions to find the thing that drives you. So for example, anger comes from, like, everything comes from love on some level. So if you see someone throw litter on the ground and you get angry at it, why are you angry? Because you care for the environment, you know, you love the environment. And it's just like the anger comes from love. And so when you can dig deeper into your emotions and find the love that's driving you, that's how you can deal with any adversity. But you've got to dig down. You don't suppress. Like you've got to go into them. And as you keep going, you keep peeling back the layers, you find the reason you're doing this. This is why all companies have a what do you call it? I'm not good with tech, like the details and stuff. But like, they have like an ethos, right? All companies have an ethos. So like, why does the company exist? What's the purpose of the company?
Like their mission,
right?
Like their mission.
The mission statement. That's the one. Like all companies have a mission statement. So you know, if you find your mission statement for whatever the change is, like why are you creating the change? So I was watching a video the other day, and one guy, big, strong, fit-looking dude, went to the doctors. There was a heart thing in his family, so he went and got a test, and the doctor goes, have you got any family? He's like, yeah, I got 2 daughters. He's like, okay, how old is your oldest daughter? He's like, 11. He's like, okay, do you want to be there for your daughter's wedding? And he was like, yeah, of course. And he's like, right, is it important to you to be there? And he's like, of course it is. Like, blah, blah, blah. He's like, right. So if you do not create change in your life right now, you won't see your daughter get married, your oldest daughter. And like, the doctor gave him a reason to create change in his life, like an emotional reason. Yeah. Something, and not everyone's going to find that straight away, right? But he did, and he was like, so he changed. He's still a big, fit, strong dude, but that thing drove him to change his lifestyle so that he could live a longevous life.
It's so true, because what we think is motivating us is really not the true motivation. Like if someone's going to try and quit doing something, it's not because, okay, I'm going to stop eating sugar because I want to be healthy. That's not the emotional driver at all.
No.
So, and I think I love that you brought up that whole concept of how great it feels when you accomplish something that's been so challenging for you. Because I always tell my audience, like, we place more value on the things that are more difficult to come by. And if it came really easily to you, you're just not going to value it that much.
No, so that's why people that win the lotto lose all their money. People that win the lotto lose all that. They're poorer because they don't actually value it, and they don't feel worthy of it either.
And I think that's the whole point, is like when you recognize that there's a huge challenge in front of you, that it's hard, it's really hard to do this. Recognize also that it's going to feel really amazing and fantastic when you actually overcome it. So I think that, that's like important thing that you just kind of brought up for people, because we're in this place where we're all being forced into a lot of change. And some of us are kicking and screaming and wanting to be dragged, and some of us are like leading the charge, and some of us are kind of in the middle saying, well, I'm kind of going to watch a little bit, I'm not sure, but like change is happening so fast, and if you're not willing to embrace it and the hardships that come with it, you're going to be left a lot more disappointed than happy at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think there's never been a time in human history that we know of where human consciousness has evolved as quickly as it is. And, we're trying to catch up to it. Like there's always new technology, new ideas, new inspiration, new things coming through. And it's a snowball effect. And so, you try and talk to my dad or my grandparents about the way that I live in 2 generations, right? If I talk to my grandparents about like how I live life and talk about open relating and polyamory, and not that I don't do those now, but I did. But just and masculine feminine dynamics and blah blah blah. And it's just like, consciousness and trauma in the body and ancestral trauma and how it's all passed down, like all these things. My grandparents just sit there and go, yeah, I don't understand anything you're talking about anymore, Tyron. Like they're like, but Uncle Jimmy last night, he had this, it's just like they can't accept the level of awareness that we now have in our generation. And even I talk to like some 20-year-old kids, and I'm just like, you guys are fucking crazy. Like the shit, the creativity that comes through your brains blows my mind, and so yeah, we are evolving so quick as a species right now, that we're constantly trying to catch up to ourselves as every generation comes through. And I think that's a big
whenever I catch myself going, oh, I remember when, it used to be this way. And I'm like, oh God, Nicole, stop right now. I mean, there's certain traditions that are nice. And I think they should be saved. But I think that we always have to recognize things are moving faster. You have to be part of the evolution, or so you simply just get left behind and you become part of the relics. It's like, no one really wants to be part of the relics. So last thing I'm going to ask you, since I have you here, and I think it would be a great opportunity for women to know this, what are some of the things that you're recognizing, or that even what men are telling you, that would be so nice if women would stop doing something? And also, what would be so nice if they started doing something?
Praise more, condemn less.
I can understand that.
It's really like, we're not complicated creatures as men. We are actually creatures of service. I had believed in the masculine soul, like the essence of masculinity is service and devotion. We just want to find something that's worthy of that service and devotion. So when you look at history, and I don't believe all of the details of all of the history, because history is written by the winners. But when you look at any man in history that is remembered for anything, he was devoted to something. And this is what we were talking about earlier about mission or purpose. Most men on the planet, they just want a wife and a family and to be able to devote themselves to that. Most men. And pointing out where a man is failing or small or less than continuously does not make him want to devote himself to you. And so if that's the way that you communicate to him, he will become a man that he needs to become just so that he can survive, right? And so he will shut down. He will shut down aspects of himself just so that he can not die and keep living. And so you won't get the fullness of him. Whereas when you praise and you celebrate and you ask for his support and his positive action, and you water those and you give him love that he is desiring, you will get the most out of him, like way more than you even thought possible. And obviously there are exceptions to the rule, and I'm not saying you can't tell him that he failed, but what I mean is praise more, condemn less. You get more from men, hands down.
Very well said. I appreciate that. And I think it's definitely something that I've been noticing more too. Like, I observe it in myself. I observe it in other women. Obviously it's a lot easier when you're the third party looking in to see everything. But I've noticed that when it comes to men, if it's a guy that I'm talking to, I will rather focus on the things that I really like that he does and tell him, I really love it when you do this, as opposed to telling him I don't really like it when you do that.
Yeah.
And
you can do both. You can do both.
Yeah,
but focus on the positive.
Like you said, more of that, less that. So
yeah.
Thank you.
And like, there's two ways to grow a garden. You can pull the weeds or you can water the plants. And I like to water the plants and pull the weeds when I need to, but I like to water the plants more.
Yeah. Well said. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Please let my audience know, what have you got coming up right now?
So there's the Advanced Man Academy. That's an ongoing 12-month program. So we do inductions every 5 weeks when we start a new module. So like I said, health, emotional intelligence, relationships, identity, and wealth. So that's for men. There's different tiers. So, if you just want the online lectures and coaching calls, then, that's tier 1. If you want to join for the in-person events that'll be over here in Australia, then there's tier 2. And then there's a tier 3, which is for, kind of one-on-one coaching and all the online content. So there's different aspects that you can jump in on. Otherwise, I've got some in-person events over here in Australia. The Entrepreneurs Advance, which is a 4-day deep dive kind of shamanic portal opening, for guys that have succeeded in life and now are bored and they're like, I don't know what to do. And it's like, cool, I'm going to go shake the shit out of you and I'm going to kill you and rebirth you, and you find out who you are on the other side. Yeah, and then a one day advance for the everyday man down here in Australia as well. It's called the Advance. Yeah, that's really all I've got running at the moment. Next year, I want to be trying to come over to America or something and get over to the States because there's a lot of awesome work being done over there, and love to come and bring my own little my own bits and pieces. But yeah, the Advanced Man Academy, and I will be running the Advanced Man Mentorship, which is a 4-month. Like, the academy is lectures and coaching. The mentorship is step-by-step processes where we spend 1 month on sexuality, 1 month on emotional intelligence, 1 month on heart opening, and 1 month on self-initiation. So that'll start up again next year. And I'm going to bring all the guys that have already come through it. I'm going to bring them on board to be the support crew. So yeah, we're going to have a nice big group of men in that next year.
Awesome. And are you on all social media? Do you have your website?
All social medias. Yeah. Facebook, Tyran Mowbray, Instagram, Tyran.Mowbray, TyranMowbray.com, TikTok, Tyran Mowbray. I think that's it. Oh, I've got LinkedIn, Tyran Mowbray as well.
I'll leave all your links for everyone in the description below so they can easily find you. Thank you so much for being on the show. It's really refreshing to have you and hear your point of view, and also like kind of your journey. It's beautiful that you've gotten to this point. So congratulations, and thank you for your service.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Nicole. It's a pleasure talking to you.
And thank you to my audience. I love you guys so much. I will be back with you next week. Thanks again for joining me for another show on the Enlighten Up podcast. I love you guys so much for all of your continued support. So remember to raise your vibe, find your tribe, and be open to the infinite possibilities held in the mysteries that surround us all. Thanks again for sharing the show with your family and friends. And if you're new to the show and you need to find out more information about me, please head on over to my website, NicoleFrolick.com, where you can join my newsletter. And please follow me on Instagram, Telegram, and YouTube. Keep your light bright, and I'll see you next week.